Say something again.
This is me saying something again.
Okay. That'll be at the front of the stream, but it doesn't really matter. Hello, and welcome to some Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about Deadpool and Wolverine. Before we do that, Buddy, why don't you tell the folks at home what it is we do on this podcast?
You know, on this podcast, we review all of the fucking Marvel. Okay, we've done a full end-to-end watch-through and like opinions and like rankings of them and everything. I mean, I have kept my rankings, I guess I want to say pretty consistent since that time. Like I still have the sheet that I go back to and I will just slot new movies where I feel like they fall. So
Yeah, it's also, it's kind of at the point where like it would be a project to rewatch everything, and I don't know if I want to, right? Like
I really wonder how the Marvel project is going to look in 20 years. When my kid is like 15, let's say I have a kid is 15, right? I'm going to be like fucking 50 or whatever, right? Is he or she going to look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe the same way that I looked at the Star Wars trilogy? Like there was just nothing that had this level of scope when I was a kid.
At least not with the interconnectedness, right? Like maybe you could say Bond, maybe you could say like some of the old serials that like maybe or like maybe one of those inscrutable soap operas, right? Like Dallas or whatever, right? Like that like none of us are ever going to go back and watch because, you know, it's like years.
Dragon Ball Z. Okay.
Yeah.
I have actually always wanted to do a full end-to-end Dragon Ball Z rewatch, but I have never gone back to actually execute on it. But anyway, I don't know. Deadpool and Wolverine is what we're talking about.
Let's give our pre-spoiler thoughts. Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
I don't know. I get the sense you didn't like it.
No.
Is that? Oh, okay.
No, I'll just go. I liked it. I thought it was. Can you still hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay, sorry. My computer made a noise and lightning just flashed outside, so I just wanted to make sure. I liked Deadpool and Wolverine. I thought it was probably the best Marvel movie in the past, probably at least year, maybe two. That being said, I think it's a movie that you want to watch now, or as close to now as possible, because it is also a movie that gets a lot of its humor from the current state of things, and you will either have to remember that context or like, I don't know, artificially generate that context in order for the movie to be as good as it is right now. And so I think it's going to fade over time just in terms of like it is dating itself on purpose almost. But like one thing I want to like point out is like, this is the Bathos movie, right? And they managed to do it better than some of the mainline Marvel movies, and like not undercutting their own emotional moments with it. Like it's incredible. And so, but like I really enjoyed the movie, but I also don't think it's like a classic, right? It's not like one we'll be talking about in years. But yeah, that's my baseline takeaway. How do you feel about it?
I also loved this movie. Well, you said like, I said love. This is my favorite, pretty definitively, my favorite Marvel movie of the last however many years.
I would agree with that. But that speaks more to the other Marvel movies than to this one, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's true. The thing that this movie gets right is it is forgettable. It is forgettable. But that's kind of to its charm. This is the Marvel movie that is the least just, it's crazy that this is true because it is burdened by lore, right? Like there is some like deep lore going on in the Deadpool and Wolverine, right? But
it exists in the context of what has been.
Yeah, it just like it has no pretension to more, I guess. Is the movie it reminds me the most of is actually Thor: Love and Thunder, okay? Which was a movie that I thought was okay. I didn't think it was great. I think it was just kind of like fine, right? It had stuff I liked and stuff I didn't like or whatever. But one of the things that I thought was very charming about that movie was that it was pretty disconnected from the rest of the main, like Marvel universe machinations that it felt like everything was going on. Quantumania was sort of the opposite of this. Quantumania was so steeped in lore that I was turned off by it. I felt like the weight of the lore was too sort of heavy. This is a movie with quite a lot of lore in terms of the Loki, TV show, but also just in terms of the way it sort of acts as a love letter to this
Yeah, to the old
20th
X-Men
century
movies.
Fox.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like era of sort of like filmmaking. Like I don't think I like, this hypothetical kid would ever really understand how the feelings that I personally got watching this, which were kind of like real. But at the end of the day, it is like ultimately, I would say, entirely superfluous to sort of the Marvel saga. And my hope is that like it never really comes up again, right?
Yeah, like
So
I think Deadpool can have like maybe a cameo somewhere, but like he can't like you can't do another one of these. I don't think. Um, and I will say also to your point about like the 20th Century Fox thing, like this isn't a spoiler, but like the end credit reel has like a straight up like artificially heart tugging like what's the song by Green Day that every
in the arms of the angels.
no. This is don't they play
Oh
it's
wait,
something
the actual song that they played.
yeah. It's something unpredictable, right? Like I don't know the name of the song because I never listened to Green Day. But
That's
like
a Green Day song.
I think it's a Green Day song.
It's time of your life is what it is. I hope you've had the time of your life. Yeah, that song. Yep.
Yeah, Green Day Good Riddance
Okay.
is yeah. But like that was like the song over like I don't know, a bunch of like high school, like end of senior year videos, right? Like this is like a thing
Yep.
meant to tug at like millennial heartstrings, right? Like in like remember
God,
X-Men, right? Like
I don't know that there is a. It's funny that we're talking about this outside of this spoiler section because it's not a spoiler. Like this is
yeah.
just all they did was play clips of these videos, but it did remind me, right? Like like, I actually still have it over there. I have a DVD of the first two X-Men movies that I used to watch constantly. X2 was like probably one of the most important movies that I watched over and over and over again as a kid, and I would probably say that movie is like truly great, right? Like that is some, superhero kino, right? But yeah, like there is this it's me. I feel like the
Yeah.
audience for that like montage was really sort of like me, the guy, the person who gets really obsessed with the original X-Men movies from whatever. Like you have to be like a 35-year-old
Yeah.
millennial who was 10 when the original X-Men came out or whatever in order to connect on that level with
Yeah,
it.
and like I said, like playing Good Riddance by Green Day is very intentionally trying to pull on those heartstrings, right? Like
Mhm.
and I thought it was kind of cheap, but it was
I
fun.
mean, the funny part was it actually made me a little bit sad because
Yeah.
it put the montage puts in stark focus how good to bad those movies cut, because it starts with X-Men, which I don't think is a particularly good movie, but X2, which I think is a fantastic movie, right? Probably one of the kind of pillars of the early superhero modern era of comic book movies, right? And then through plenty of well-regarded, like films, right? I think most people would say X-Men First Class is, a good movie. Days of Future Past, the original Deadpool, stuff like that, right? But then it sort of falls off this cliff of X-Men Apocalypse, X-Men Dark Phoenix, and I'm just like, oh god, I forgot about these movies are so awful. Why are they like
Yeah.
reminding me of them, right? And
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, well, let's maybe get to spoilers then cuz
Okay,
like
let's get to spoilers. Yeah.
yeah. All right, so here's a spoiler warning. It's I'd say the plot isn't particularly important. Um but I don't know. If you want, like, we're probably going to talk about a bunch of the jokes. You should probably, and a bunch of the surprises, right? Like, because there are a couple. So, and given that you really have to watch this movie in time, I think I would say go watch it before you do listen to this if you haven't yet. Anyway, so that's your spoiler warning. So, what do you want to talk about first. 'Cause, like, I feel like a lot of this is just gonna be like pointing out like fun moments, right? Like,
Yeah, like Channing Tatum's Gambit. Okay, this is the high point of the movie for me because I love Channing Tatum and I also love Gambit. He's one of my favorite. He's probably my favorite X-Man. Um, and he got to do like cool Gambit shit, and I just hope to God that it leads to something, even though I don't think it will. Like a version of things where I get to see the true proper Channing Tatum Gambit would be like the greatest. This is his, part of this is that I'm parasocial. It's his white whale. He is from the South. He's from Florida, to be fair.
he's not. I was gonna ask if he's actually Cajun because he was like,
He is not. Yeah, he is not actually Cajun, but he is from the South, and so he was gunning for this Gambit movie in sort of the X-Men, and he has been wanting to do this for like maybe 20 years. Like I feel like I've been reading news about Channing Tatum as Gambit for the longest time. And I used to hate Channing Tatum when I was a teenager because I thought of him as like the step up dancer guy, and I was just like, oh, rolling my eyes, right? Like he's not cool, right? He dances for girls, right? But now as a connoisseur of the Magic Mike film franchise, okay, which is also true Kino, legitimate Kino, I just want him to realize his dream and be in the superhero movies that he's wanted to for the last, 10 years.
yeah, yeah. I thought he was pretty great. I really loved the Chris Evans fake out. Like that was just like perfect. If somehow you haven't seen this, Chris Evans shows up and they play it like he's gonna be Captain America, and he's playing Johnny Storm. He's playing.
Wait, Channing Tatum grew up in the bayous? I thought he grew up around. Are there bayous in Florida? I thought he was
there's
from
bogs.
Florida.
Like there's like swamps in Florida that you might call a bayou.
Okay. This is why he's from Alabama and Mississippi. Okay, that's interesting. I thought he was from Florida. That's my bad. I thought he was from Florida because Magic Mike is autobiographical to him, essentially, right? It is set in Tampa, where he became a stripper and was essentially discovered as a dancer, right? And so I was just extrapolating from there. But yes, sure, Alabama and Mississippi is fair enough. I'm sorry, that completely interrupted.
No, I was just talking about the Chris Evans moment. I just thought it was fun.
Oh yeah, the Chris Evans moment was pretty good, especially because, man, I remember at the time, I have always been a Chris Evans enjoyer. Weirdly, because have you ever seen the movie Not Another Teen Movie?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so that movie is secretly golden. It's super funny and also super funny, he's super funny in it. And I remember thinking, oh my God, he's so funny. And then he was in the Fantastic Four movies, which I didn't love either of the Fantastic but he's a pretty good Johnny Storm in it. And then he's in Scott Pilgrim, right? This is sort of his trajectory, right? And then he gets cast as Captain America, and everybody is like, what the fuck? This is the poster boy for like asshole jock bully, essentially. In all three of these movies, he's kind of playing that character archetype. But no, he kills it as Steve Rogers, and then he just becomes Steve Rogers for 10 years, right? And then I guess he plays that guy in Knives Out. It's a big role, I feel like, in the 2010s. He plays that guy in Knives Out who's also just an asshole. And I was just like, man, Chris Evans, you're actually pretty good at playing a dickhead. So the return of Johnny Storm was pretty nice.
Yeah. What was what did you think of Cavill Wolverine? Like, cause that was, like, I was like, yeah. But it was clearly like, I feel like there was like the beginning of the movie I was less of a fan of, right? Like I thought the opening scene where like he was beating people up with the bones was with Wolverine skeleton was like, I thought that was a neat idea, but it also felt like a little much, especially because did you ever finish Loki season 2?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Because like,
I don't care. You can spoil it if you want.
No. I mean, it's basically at the end of season 2, the TVA is good guys now, and so it feels like icky, right? Like,
okay,
yeah.
But then you find out that Paradox is the bad guy and he's doing bad guy things.
Yeah, and so it reestablishes it, but it's like, because I didn't know that at the moment when it was happening, I was kind of like, this feels weird, right? Like,
Doing it to Bye 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 and him doing the dance was pretty funny. Like there's a lot of laughs. This is actually the funniest of the Deadpool movies.
I think I
And
agree.
weirdly, the most comics accurate, I would say, of sort of Deadpool's persona more than anything else. Like it's really hard to the 2016 and 2018, 19, whatever, Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2, right, get close to sort of capturing Deadpool's persona. But this is where I would say that actually Deadpool's persona came across the best. Like as a maybe what I would say is Deadpool 2016 and Deadpool 2, or Deadpool and Cable, whatever, Cable and Deadpool, whatever that was called. Those two movies felt like I was watching Ryan Reynolds doing a Deadpool impression. This is where I was like, oh, this is Deadpool. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's very subtle. I feel like you could put the two movies up side by side, and I would prefer this one to the other two, but I don't know that I would really be able to like quantify it in any meaningful way. It's just like it's like the texture of the jokes are just like meaningfully different. So, and the filmmaking of them is also better. And this is something I do feel pretty strongly about. The the intercutting of him beating up the TVA agents, like brutally killing them, right? In sort of this like splatterfest gore thing, but he's also doing the dance from InSync's Bye 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 in like intercut with it. That is incredibly funny filmmaking, in my opinion, right? And I don't think that Deadpool has really ever had that before. Like Deadpool has always had jokes, but it's never had like filmmaking jokes, if that makes sense.
I guess so. I will say that most of that scene just kind of bounced off me. I just thought it was kind of like trite, right? Like I think there's been better music beat ups in the universe, and I didn't do it for me. But I see what you're
I mean, we
saying, right?
always have "I'm Just a Girl," right? Like from Captain Marvel, one of the all-time famous best fight scenes in all of Marvel cinema, right?
Yeah. Um, but no, but like I do get what you're saying because I feel like like the minivan fight with some of this too, right? Like very well done cinematography to show that fight in a unique way that was also super funny because they were fighting in a fucking
Yeah, I would actually say that the action is overall pretty bad. Like I, outside of a couple of moments, like maybe I would say Blade throws his little boomerang thing and catches it, like in the movies. That was cool. Gambit sticking cards to people and then just standing still as they go pop, 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 pop. Okay, right? It's like, but like none of the actual Wolverine and Deadpool themselves fighting one another was all that good or interesting and funny. And I would actually say it was kind of played out. But I, uh, you
I,
know,
I don't know. I still think the car fight was good, but I take you that the opening fight scene was kind of whatever, right? Like and like most of it felt kind of like it felt like that car fight was the fight, right? Like everything else was just kind of
yeah.
like teasing, right? Like um and not particularly like you said well done, especially because like a lot of a lot of the villains were not like fighty people, right? And like I
Yeah,
saw
I would also almost sort of say it's not the point for like the fights to be cool. Maybe the fights that you're supposed to think that Blade and Gambit and Elektra are cool, obviously, but those are sort of different, I guess I would say, than like any fight with Deadpool in it is sort of like meant to be a joke, and that
yeah.
kind of just removes all of the things that I would measure about it to make a good fight, essentially.
Yeah, somebody pointed out that like a lot of films do this now, but like that the Deadpool on Deadpool's fight was essentially a send up of the raid, like the famous kind of like one shot
Oh yeah. Mhm.
scene for that, and like that's I thought that was pretty uh I thought that was pretty good. Like I thought that
Mhm.
was a fun a fun moment, I guess. Sorry, I am adjusting our screen because it's not lining up right and it's bothering me. Um,
Okay.
Uh, but yeah. what other things do we want to talk about with this movie? Because
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, there's just nothing to. This is actually kind of the thing that makes me dislike Deadpool in its comics form. Is like, it's funny, it's good for a laugh, but I feel like making an hour-long podcast about Deadpool and Wolverine is kind of like making an hour-long podcast about like the Garfield comic that ran in today's newspaper. It's just like there was a joke. It made me laugh, right? Like there's just kind of nothing else there.
yeah, no, I get that, right? Like, yeah,
15 minutes and we already ran out of steam.
yeah. I mean,
But again, this is the best one. Okay, this is the best Marvel movie in the
yeah.
last
So
4 years or so.
Wolverine gets a real arc in this, right? So what do you think of that? Maybe that's the thing we could talk about.
Okay, I actually thought that stuff was pretty bad,
Okay.
to be honest. But in like an under sort of served way. So the thing I think they were going for was man, it's pretty complicated. Okay. In X2, there's this thing where William Stryker raids the X-Men compound. And this is actually one of the great fight scenes of that era, right? There's this thing where Wolverine is just brutally murdering these I don't even remember what their agents have because I haven't seen that movie in so fucking long, but whatever Stryker's task force, the government agents that are rounding up the mutants are. And it's super, and everybody went nuts for this fight scene. This is like the I don't know, what's like a good comic book fight scene in the modern era? I don't know.
I
Marvel
don't know.
has none of them, so it's got to be like it's like Batman in the warehouse in Batman v Superman would be a good kind of example. It's just like, Wolverine is running around, he's beating up all these guys, but people are using their powers in interesting ways. Colossus shows up, Kitty Pryde shows up. There's these little blink and you'll miss it sort of references. Siren shows up, wakes everybody up with a big scream, and all of these bad guys are shooting like tranquilizers, these little like darts, and Wolverine is just running around just like kicking the absolute shit out of all of them. And this is like the high point of those Fox, basically, like that kind of like moment, right? I feel like what they were implying is that this Wolverine was the Wolverine who went and got drunk on that night rather than be at the house where he helps, you know, keep everybody safe, basically. um, and that's kind of his guilt. I simultaneously wanted them to go harder. The backstory of Wolverine in Logan, in Old Man Logan, is much harder. In that one, Wolverine he gets not mind controlled, but he gets illusioned by Mysterio, and he ends up fighting the X-Men, and he doesn't realize he's fighting the X-Men, and he ends up killing the X-Men because Mysterio just like fucks with his thing. So he thinks he's fighting like Lady Deathstrike and Magneto, but he's actually fighting Jean Grey and Scott Summers, and he kills them, right? Like that's the backstory in Old Man Logan, which I thought would have been pretty perfect for this, to be honest with you. And that's where I thought they were going with it at first. Or there's also, there's a couple of different sort of variations, but the thing that I think kind of lost the plot is he just talks in very general terms about it. They don't actually show it. There's nothing really tangible to sort of latch on to. They keep saying he's the worst Wolverine, and then this reveal happens, but it just happens through like this conversation, basically. And I just kind of felt like that was pretty underserved and underbaked. Part of it also is just that I think Hugh Jackman was going a little fuck happy with the rated R, and so he just didn't feel like the same kind of character that we had sort of met in those um movies. So
Yeah, no,
yeah.
I mean, if I'm gonna be maximally generous, like that's kind of the point, right? Like he's supposed to be a different Wolverine, but I generally agree with you. I think that like what he did was not like immediately apparent, and like it just like it didn't resolve quite cleanly as I think it should have. I also thought that on the other end of things that like, so in the chat, Lou points out it's like speculate on who the anchor person is in the Prime Marvel universe. To answer that directly, I think the idea is that there isn't in like the perfect timeline. I feel like this story got written before the full details of season 2 of Loki got written. And so like that's why it doesn't quite like they still call it like the not the perfect timeline. No, they call
the sacred timeline.
Sacred timeline, yeah. Also, it kind of undercuts Logan's sacrifice if like the world unravels once he dies, right? Like, you know, like that like if you think about that too hard, it like basically kind of undoes that, right? Like not that he knew about it, but like it feels like he sacrificed himself for nothing because it means that the world falls apart, I guess. I feel like it was like an invented contrivance so that the plot of the movie could happen. And I don't think it'll ever be brought up again because it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. And I don't think it. I just don't think that whole mechanic was
the one
great.
thing, honestly, that made me happiest in this movie was the part where Deadpool says that they're not doing the multiverse stuff, and that it all sort of fell flat or whatever. And I just hope to God that he's right, because this is what I've been saying on this cast for 3 years at this point, right? Just do ground level Thunderbolts, right? Captain America stuff is all. That's where the Marvel universe should be going, in sort of my opinion. But I think that sort of spoke a little bit to what we're getting at. In a certain sense, the thing I'm really criticizing is actually the same thing that happened with Thanos, except it's a little bit better than it was in Endgame. In Endgame, they're pulling the bait and switch where a Thanos who doesn't interact with these characters is sort of assumed to have the history and, you know, what like interaction with all of these people that he just doesn't, and that is why that falls flat with me. So when this is a different Logan who is pretty clearly different and has a heartfelt conversation with X-23, and I was just like that. This is really what I'm describing. Falls flat to me. But also at the same time, like this is probably one of the movies where I'm gonna just say, like, I don't care about the emotional stakes or the heart of it, right? Like, that's really not what this is really not what matters.
Yeah.
I would almost sort of have accepted a version of things where the whole thing was a farce and a send up, instead of actually taking it seriously, like the threat of the Time Ripper, and I just really want to help my universe, right? Like Deadpool does have a technical character arc here. If I were rewriting this, move that, and I would just treat this like fucking Monty Python. You know what I mean? Just like or Monty Python's a bad example. Like Step Brothers, okay? Just like something that is more, if the point of this is to be sort of absurd and a send up of whatever, then it should be treated with the same level of reverence that a character arc is treated in a Will Ferrell movie, right? And they kind of missed that, but you know, whatever.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting because, like I said at the top of the episode, right? Like, this is the movie where you expect them to be able to do that without a penalty, and they actually kind of like we criticize the bathos in the main Marvel movies a lot, and this avoids that pitfall. Even though it sounds like you would have even been happier if they had done that.
It's true. I would have been.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, if you told me that the Time Ripper, when you turn it on, makes a big long fart sound, okay, and then Deadpool says, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, I reprogrammed the Time Ripper to rip a huge fart," I would have been happier with that ending. I would have laughed my ass off. That would have been so fucking funny, right? And it would be a huge, you know, send up of the big bad universe ending threat or whatever. And you could just roll with that on its face, and I would have been a happy camper, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the way it ended. I thought they approached it with the appropriate amount of levity, right? Like bursting off Wolverine's shirt, right? Like for the Hugh Jackman.
That was pretty funny, yeah. For the gratuitous Hugh Jackman like abs shot.
Yeah. There were a couple, like, you know, to your point about him playing more like Deadpool than in the previous movies. I think part of that was helped by basically Nice Pool existing, right? Because like that character felt more like Ryan Reynolds, right? Like
Mm.
I died when he's like, I can lightly tap the fourth wall too. It just looks at the camera and says, the proposal, right? Like I love that moment.
This is pretty good to be
Just like
honest.
the meta nature of the, and also like little stuff, right? Like I don't know if you noticed, but like the shop that they get kicked into is like Rob
Is
Liefeld's.
Liefeld's feet. Yep.
Yeah. It's like Feet Emporium or whatever, right? Like
Huge fan of that.
apparently the woman inside of Lady Deadpool is Ryan Reynolds' real life wife, Blake.
Oh, Blake Lively.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. No, my girlfriend looked it up. She was like Blake Lively. I'm like, who? It's like his real wife. It's like, oh,
It's
cool.
funny because Deadpool makes references to Gossip Girl, like talks about getting a boner at Gossip Girl, and it's funny because that's where Blake Lively like started. Is she was like the main girl or one of the main. I don't know. I didn't watch fucking Gossip Girls. Yeah. I don't even know the plot of Gossip Girl. There is an anonymous account. Do you remember what was it? We had a version of this at Hopkins. The message board that was all anonymous where people would just like post drama. I can't remember. It was like Whispers or something. It had some like stupid
so
cringe name
Whispers
like
was the generic startup version that came after our original one got shut down because of like controversy.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Like this is where you went to just like browse the local Johns Hopkins drama, right? And it was always just like so and so was kissing another boy, not her boyfriend, at the Pike frat party. It's just like that level of stuff. But this was also where that guy got super canceled. Do you remember that he wrote that stupid column? We were friends with him. What the fuck was that guy's name? I was. You were friends with him.
No. I don't.
Wasn't that the reason that the site got taken down?
No. That was the actual paper. But that was that was in the school paper. I don't want to say his name because I do think it is like giving him trouble and like actually so getting employed. Yeah.
I mean, I feel bad for him for that reason. Like, I understand, but anyway, the plot of Gossip Girl is that there is an account called Gossip Girl who is that account just sharing like the drama or whatever. And I think Blake Lively might have been the Gossip Girl. I don't know. I don't fucking know the plot of this show, but whatever the case, that was the reference that was being made in Deadpool. Like stuff like that is cute. I'm on board for it.
Yeah. I thought like it felt like a very like Bart say the line moment when Blade says motherfuckers always try to skate uphill, right? I skate uphill, right? Like that's like a famous Blade line. It's like, oh, I guess they zoom in on him and he says it. I was like, I couldn't tell if that was like funny or cringe. And it kind of
I have to say, this is one of the worst sort of mic drop moments the MCU has ever provided, which is because I only saw it over the weekend. I had COVID when it first came out, so I just like couldn't leave the house for like 10 days. So I saw it on like Saturday night or something. But when Blade, Elektra, and Gambit were revealed, those were moments that were supposed to be huge, like cheering moments from the crowd, and it was dead silent from my audience. And I was like, what the fuck? Like that's never happened to me in a Marvel before.
I don't know how crowded it was. Like my theater had like 4 people total in it, and me and my girlfriend were 2 of them. So
my theater was pretty crowded. It was maybe half full. It was pretty crowded. It was like the 10:40 showing on a Saturday night. I don't know, 3 weeks after the movie came out.
So Lou clarifies in the chat that it was Blake Lively's voice, not her. Okay. Not her. No, she wasn't actually in the suit. Which I guess makes sense. I don't know what she looks like, so I don't know. How did you like that whole setup? That was like a Deadpool core reference, right? Like that was like there was. I remember when we were in like either high school or college, like everybody decided that Deadpool was the coolest, and so he got like a whole line of comic books that like got tired really quick. That was like a specific thing that happened, and that's where all those. It was
the popularity of the Cable and Deadpool run, which is why Deadpool 2 was about Cable. Cable and Deadpool was a really successful run because Deadpool is funny and Cable is super serious, and so they just have like great buddy cop energy. Which I don't really remember what I said about Deadpool 2 at the time, but my vague recollection is that they captured that sort of energy. And they're replicating it here, by the way, because Wolverine and Deadpool have a similar sort of dynamic. I actually think that this says this is a movie didn't do great favors for Wolverine. I feel like if Wolverine was my favorite superhero, I'm maybe excited to see him in the yellow suit, but that's kind of it. There's not a lot of like sweet Wolverine shit that happens. Do you know what I mean?
So I think part of the problem is we talked about this in Cable and Deadpool, is Deadpool works best when he's kind of like the background, like the secondary character, right? But this is his movie, right? So like
yeah, you're right.
Right, like he is simultaneously trying to be the background character and be the driving force of the movie, and it kind of works for him, but it doesn't work for Wolverine, because Wolverine's supposed to, like, in the classic version of this, Wolverine would have all the attention, and Deadpool will just like zip by in the background and make a quip, right? Like, and so it doesn't leave a lot of room for Wolverine to breathe.
Yeah, like when I think of like great Wolverine moments from like the comics, I don't know. I don't know that they've ever really been captured on like on screen. But maybe I just have like a bad the thing that makes Wolverine cool as a character and like fun is that he is like a hair's breadth from being a bad guy. You know what I mean? Wolverine is the guy on the X-Men who fucking murders people. Okay? Like everybody else on the X-Men, you try and take him in, you're playing by superhero rules, and Wolverine will straight up chop a dude's head off. Okay? And that's what's cool, right? The problem I sort of have with Wolverine in this movie is that Deadpool chops guys' heads off. You know, Deadpool has a whole extended comedy bit about stabbing a dude in the dick with Wolverine's claws and then not being able to pull him out, and it looks like he's fucking the guy in the butt. And it's just like the dynamic of it is so thrown off by kind of the nature of that. The thing about Wolverine that's sweet, here's a great Wolverine moment from the comic, okay? There's a comic in Ultimate X-Men where Wolverine and Cyclops both want to fuck Jean Grey. Jean Grey has rejected Wolverine, okay, and is Cyclops' boyfriend or girlfriend, I guess. Cyclops and Wolverine go to like a mission together on the Savage Land, you know, this like place of like dinosaurs and shit. This is where the Saurian, the big pterodactyl guy who's like, I don't want to cure kids, I want to turn people into dinosaurs. It's that guy. They go there and they're like fighting him or whatever. And there's a moment where Scott gets pushed off of a cliff and he's holding on the cliff, okay? And Wolverine goes to pick him up and bends down and grabs his hand. And Cyclops goes, you know, I thought Xavier was crazy for putting you and I on a mission, but here you are saving my life. Looks like he's smarter. Looks like he's smarter than the both of us. And Wolverine looks to the side for a second, and a picture of like a sort of hazy picture of Jean Grey crying in his arms kind of like plays out in a kind of thought bubble. It's like a thought bubble panel, right? And then Wolverine lets Cyclops go and he drops to the bottom of this ravine, right? Like, this is classic Wolverine, right? This guy was kind of willing to let Cyclops die in order to fuck his girlfriend. That's the stuff that makes like Wolverine, right? You can't get that energy from this version of Wolverine when he's I don't know, just in here with Deadpool. The snakes don't matter. This is why Wolverine and Colossus, funnily enough, make a really great pair for like the fastball special and things, because the thing that Colossus has with Deadpool, where Colossus is serious, he takes the job of a superhero super seriously, and he has this like Captain America sort of thing. Wolverine doesn't have that. This is why Wolverine gets along with Captain America so well, right? They both fought in World War II together, and you know, Steve Rogers did a bunch of jumps with Lucky Jim, and you know, everybody said that Lucky Jim used to get shot, but he would just brush off the bullets, and it turned out he's a fucking mutant or whatever. That works because like Captain America has that opposite sort of, you know, that vibe, right? Like these are why all of those like counter interactions work. Deadpool and Wolverine just don't have that chemistry. And that movie didn't really capture that chemistry, but I also don't think it fucking matters or it cares, because like the whole point of this movie is to be funny. So like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think part of that is that So in the chat, Lou says the movie plays Wolverine nicer, if not actually nice. Playing up the Heart of Gold, blah blah blah. I think that was pretty much true for the movie version of the character, right? Like for the Hugh Jackman Wolverine. Like I feel like he was never kind of like that feral edged version of him that we get in the comic. This happens a lot where like, you know, the comic version like I think this happened a lot with Thor, right? Like Thor became like the, you know, Chris Hemsworth like jokey version of it rather than like the actual Thor Odinson who is fairly serious in the comics. Or I get you talked about this a lot with Doctor Strange, right? Like he is not as sarcastic or as like, you know, like he's a little bit more chaotic in the MCU than he is in the comics. And I think part of that is because I think it happens to the MCU for different reasons, but like because I think it's true enough to the X-Men character or to the Fox, you know, the Jackman Wolverine, but I see what you're saying. I think
yeah, I definitely do think that's true. I kind of want to say that Wolverine in X2 gets there because he's just murdering these fucking government agents, right? Like he is stabbing people with his claws and they're dying, right? And you know, yeah, he kills like Lady Deathstrike at the end of that. And I guess he kills William Stryker. Damn, he's pretty brutal in that movie. What a good movie. I should go watch that movie again. But anyway, you know, like, yeah, I kind of feel like that's the end of it. I don't know that there has really been a good. I remember liking the Wolverine movie called The Wolverine, where he's in Japan and he's doing his sort of samurai thing.
Oh, I forgot about that. I don't think I ever watched it. But yeah.
It's the one with the adamantium, the silver samurai, which he's in an adamantium samurai suit, which I don't think is accurate from the comics, but whatever, you know.
I think Silver Samurai is in Marvel vs. Capcom 3.
That would not surprise me.
No, it's in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. That's what it is.
Okay. Yeah. The big bad guy in that one was Silver Samurai.
You're right there.
Sorry.
No worries.
I just gotta hack up a lung. Listen, my healing factor is a little off, okay? But I definitely agree with you, especially on like the Chris Hemsworth sort of like thing. Like it's funny that in a movie where I felt like Ryan Reynolds fell into the background a little bit and was able to sort of better be the character, this is some of the least Wolverine that Wolverine has ever been. Yeah,
I mean it's supposed to be kind of like a last ride for the Jackman Wolverine. Although as Deadpool kept joking, they're gonna have him doing it till he's 99.
I don't know. He still knows how to get like his crazy fucking abs or whatever.
Yeah,
I guess is fine.
So I have a comics lore question for you.
Sure. Yeah.
The Wolverine that's like strapped to the X with the pile of skulls. What is that from?
That is a reference to Age of Apocalypse, I want to say. Hold on. I might be wrong about this. Age of Apocalypse is this like it was a big crossover in the X-Men comics in the 90s. Everybody loved this. It was like super famous. It sort of became this post-apocalypse thing where Apocalypse rules the world and the different mutants are being hunted, and I think it's Wolverine and Kitty Pryde, I want to say, are like the two main ones. There's a very famous comics cover from that time where there's a bunch of wanted posters, and it's like all of the deceased. It says like Cyclops deceased, Colossus missing, you know, whatever, and it's Wolverine is holding Kitty Pryde's hand, and they're like on a spotlight. The cops have found them or whatever. This is sort of the Age of Apocalypse stuff. And I was pretty sure that was a reference to the Age of Apocalypse Wolverine, but I could be wrong about that. I don't super love, to be honest with you, I don't super love that whole sort of era of comics, so.
Apparently it's House of X.
House of X.
Fever Dream, Uncanny X-Men number 251.
Okay, well then, you know,
in 1989. Apparently, it is its own comic, or it's its own cover. Interesting. Uh, anyway, I will go look up that. I thought that was the thing that I was getting, like you were gonna know off the top of your head, but if you don't,
Okay.
that's okay. What else is there to talk about here? Was there anything? Were there any deep cuts that you saw that you thought were particularly well done?
I don't know any deep cuts that I saw. I actually feel like I saw so many of them in the moment, but now I don't remember any of them. Um, yeah, because like there were a bunch of characters. So for instance, the Azazel, the red guy, that's from who Blade kills, the teleporting demon, like Nightcrawler. That's Nightcrawler's dad. He's from X-Men First Class, and I guess he just shows up and leaves. I haven't seen X-Men First Class. I haven't watched any of those, basically.
I watched
In
Days
so
of Future
long.
Past, but that was like it. Like I don't think I
Yeah,
ever.
I mean, I watched it. I don't remember liking Days of Future Past. In fact, I remember liking Days of Future Past because that's the one where I want to say Mystique gets hit by the mutant, or no, it's like somebody gets hit by the mutant cure, and Magneto instantly kills her because he doesn't care about humans. He only cares about mutants or whatever, or like tries to kill her. I think he's trying to kill Mystique. And so when Mystique takes the mutant cure, he just immediately he goes from trying to protect her to trying to murder her, which I thought was you know cool at the time. But even though I like I don't know, I don't remember all that much from that era. It really sort of died, I want to say 5 years ago with the Apocalypse, you know, Dark Phoenix stuff. Because they mentioned Quicksilver, but he didn't get to actually like show up and be on screen. Um,
Yeah,
I was thinking that was gonna be, you know, like that was gonna be a thing. I was surprised Cable didn't show up. I felt like there would have been a good opportunity, I guess. I don't know, for
I
Cable.
imagine some of that's just like who they could get, right? Like, um,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it felt like maybe Ben Affleck, they couldn't get Ben Affleck, so they just had like a throwaway line about how he already died, right? Like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, it's also complicated because like some of these are characters who you feel like are pretty safe. So for instance, there is technically an Elektra in the MCU that's obviously not Jennifer Garner. But she is, you know, she's from like the TV shows. But like, you know, Matt Murdock has showed up. He showed up in the Spider-Man movies. It feels like they have a bigger kind of connection to the whatever that guy's name is version of the character, the Irish guy.
uh,
But like
oh,
the I don't know, the Netflix show version.
yeah. No,
Wait, and isn't there a new thing for that coming out?
yeah,
Daredevil Born
maybe
Again?
like the Netflix shows are like semi-canon now, right? Like, it's kind of like Star Wars stuff where like you see someone show up that like already existed, and so you could be like, oh,
Oh, I see. So the first episode is supposed to be so it's in 2025 in um okay, for Daredevil Born Again. Fair enough. Daredevil Born Again is great. You know, that's an adaptation of Frank Miller comic, but I wonder if we'll it's so dark. I wonder if we'll go there. In that one, Karen Page becomes a heroin addicted prostitute, and uh Matt Murdock gets like the shit kicked out of him by Kingpin after Kingpin deduces his identity. I want to say I'm pretty sure Kingpin figures out that he's Matt Murdock. That's where like that happens. I don't know.
interesting.
We
Yeah,
shall see, I suppose.
yeah. Um, anything else you want to talk about?
I don't know. Yeah, we're scraping the bottom of the
Yeah.
barrel on this one.
Yeah, because there's only so far you can go with just be like, and there was a funny joke here, right? Like, and like tell the joke in a
Yeah.
less funny way on the stream.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny because I like I like so much of what was on page here, but I think what I really liked is that it was so far from so much of the Marvel stuff that I'm not interested in. I'm actually kind of hoping that Captain America New World Order is sort of like a reset moment. I mean, we haven't talked about this, is that Robert Downey Jr. is going to be Doctor Doom
Yeah,
in the MCU.
I assume
Which
I
they announced
assume they're
at
gonna paint him
Comic-Con.
as like an alternate universe, like a multiverse, a multiverse Stark.
Tony Stark. Yep.
Yeah.
I would hate that so much, but I also think they're probably going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have your reasons to hate that. I think that's fine for like a different universe, right? Like I think you, if they play him like Doom and they just like use that as an excuse as why he has the same face as Tony Stark, right? And like maybe you get a moment where like, you know, his mask comes off and like Thor's like, whoa, right? Like or something like that. Like I think that could be fine if they do it right. Who
Yeah,
knows?
the part that I want to preserve is Doom's history and his backstory because it's really good. And I feel like you could just go so far. Doctor Doom is actually it's funny. He's sort of the perfect villain, but I actually don't think I want him to be a villain in a way. One of the things I've talked about before is my love of a hero and his arch nemesis joined together to fight the bigger bad guy, right? So a good example of this is Lex Luthor and Superman team up in the Justice League comics. The Justice League is trying to put together like a team to fight Darkseid, and they recruit Lex Luthor, and Superman fucking hates it. He's so mad about it, but he thinks it's like it's the only way, right? And so you get to have like whatever 10 issues of nominal supervillain Lex Luthor gets to be like a smarmy prick to Superman as they are both on the Justice League together, putting together, you know, a team to fight Darkseid, right? Lex Luthor is great casting for that role. Okay, what an amazing character to put in that specific role, right? But Doctor Doom is made for that. Okay, when Doctor Doom gets to team up with heroes, it is so fun. It is like peak comics. Like there's a whole set of comics where Doctor Doom and Doctor Strange, you know, I've explained this in the past how Doctor Doom is actually the second most powerful. His mother is a, you know, like Bonnie witch, trained on I think Mount Gundabad or something, Wunderbar bad, something like that. The same mountain where Scarlet Witch gets her powers. In the comics, not in like Multiverse of Madness stuff. I mean. And he is the second most magic user in the Marvel universe, and he keeps trying to take the Sorcerer Supreme, like the mantle of the Sorcerer Supreme. But there is a comic where, you know, Doctor Doom and Doctor Strange have to team up to rescue Doctor Doom's mom's soul from hell, from Mephisto's realm. Hell, colloquially, right?
Right.
And it's just like that is what I would want out of a Doctor Doom. I think you could have him be a villain in the first Fantastic Four movie, and he'll be great. But then you just poured him directly into sort of like Avengers stuff, and the Avengers have to go to Latveria, and they have to convince Doom that they have to, you know, that they have to do like their thing or whatever. And it's just like you could do stuff like that. It would be awesome. I don't know. I don't think they're gonna go for that. I'm pretty sure that they're just subbing out Kang for Doom at this point, which, to be fair, is a good choice. Kang and Doom sort of share, I guess I would say, similar kind of like machinations in a way.
I think you
But
need a little
yeah.
bit of runway before you can do like I think Doom as like the villain that helps that like occasionally helps the heroes. You need like I know that you and even me just from like cultural osmosis understand Doom as that character, but I think you need the ramp up of him just being evil for a little while.
Yeah, this is what I mean by the Fantastic Four. Is I would use the Fantastic Four, establish Doom. He's just the villain, right? But then in the Avengers, now the Avengers have to go to Latveria and they're interacting with Doom, but he's just like a road, you know, like a road bump on their overall plan, right? As the Avengers are chasing down, you know, whatever, some other villain.
Yeah, or like, you know, they think it's Doom, right? It points to Latveria and they get there and like Doom is in the middle of like fighting something or right, like, you know, instantly means, you know, it's like I didn't do this, or like they get there and they're interrogating him and then like something breaks through the wall. It's like, oh, it wasn't Doom, it was, you know, the actual villain. And it's like, you know.
Yeah. Especially because Doctor Doom is the ultimate villain betrayer. This is one of my other favorite things about Doom. He does this all the time in the comics. Doom will team up with villains and then immediately backstab them as soon as they've like he is like the quintessential like boss that murders his own henchman as soon as that henchman full. Like there's a moment where Doom I want to say it's with Thanos, actually. I'm pretty sure. It gets like shared around on Twitter all the time. And Thanos talks about he's helping Doom do a thing. It says, I'm Thanos. I'm the bearer of the Infinity Gauntlet, like the rightful owner of the Infinity Stones. And Doom just goes, do you have any Infinity Stones right now? And then like vaporizes Thanos,
like rips
from
his like
existence.
skeleton out or something. I've seen that panel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've seen this, right? Yeah, it is rips his head off and his like skull out and all this stuff. That's quintessential Doom. That's like perfect Doctor Doom stuff. And I just feel like, you could do so much fun shit with like that kind of framing. But I also think that, you could probably do a version of Doom that is I don't know. You can do a version of Doom that is like an alternate Tony Stark, where you're not getting into any of this kind of like backstory stuff. I don't know how you do Doom without Latveria. Latveria, I would say, is pretty core to Doom, but maybe Tony Stark is I don't know, an Eastern European kid or something. Like, fuck, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they'll like, I think it's got to be a multiverse thing. I'm thinking that like Wanda and Quicksilver got caught beneath a Stark munition, right? Like my guess they're gonna.
Oh my god, in Sokovia.
Yes.
Whoa. You think it's gonna be Sokovia? Okay.
Yeah. Honestly, until you said that, I thought they were the same place. I forgot that they were different places.
Yeah, Latveria and Sokovia are two different places. Sokovia was invented for Age of Ultron,
right.
But this is before they had the access to the rights again. Wouldn't have been able to refer to Latveria.
Yeah, no, I assume that maybe they'll pull some magic nonsense, or they'll Wanda, like that would actually like work with the magic thing, right? Like like in alternate universe, like Tony Stark gets caught beneath the Maximov munition or something, or like like she casts a spell or something that like makes him feel all the pain that he caused, or something like that, right? Like it'll probably be dumb, but that's like how I expect them to do it, right? Like, in the chat, Arahe says, "God, I hate Marvel."
I will totally like Marvel again if they do Doctor Doom right. That's the way that Marvel can win me back. It's just like get rid of all this stupid bullshit and do Doctor Doom.
Honestly, you know what makes me feel worse about this is that they revealed it was Robert Downey Jr., right? Like,
yeah,
I would have loved it if that was a surprise, right? Like, if
God, and honestly, the weirdest thing. This is the other thing that makes me like nervous, I guess, about Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. perfected a sort of voice for Tony Stark that is very idiosyncratic, and I think everybody really likes that voice, right? I have this one normie friend named Sarah. She loves the Marvel movies. She loves Tony Stark, okay? But what she really loves is like the Robert Downey Jr. like voice, I think. And it has come to dominate everything else about Iron Man. Like this specific Robert Downey Jr. kind of like way of sort of like talking. And the real question to me is, can Robert Downey Jr. Throw that to the wayside? Doom has an incredibly specific way he talks. He refers to himself in the person, right? He just puts, he's so unendingly kind of like arrogant and puts everybody else down. He just has like this great villain sort of way of speaking and like way of talking, that I would just be unendingly disappointed if they in any way lean into the Robert Downey Jr. voice. It's kind of like, you remember Black Adam? One of the things I praised about that movie is that The Rock really threw aside his kind of movie star persona to play Black Adam. Robert Downey Jr. has to do the same thing if he wants to do Doom well, I think is what I would.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I think part of the problem is that like the fans probably won't mind, right? Like if he's just kind of like, green Tony Stark, right? Like,
I would be so mad. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like Doom. I don't know. Doom and Tony Stark have that thing in common, like and there's a bunch of stuff with that like all together, but
Yeah, I mean, there's a good version of this, right? Like, there's the arrogance that you see in Tony Stark translated into like in a more imperious, Eastern European version of him. But
yeah.
do they do that? Do they pull that off? Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Well, there you go. We made it. We made the hour
Yeah.
to cross the finish line there. Okay, we were not winning any races tonight. Okay, you don't have to. We did not get the gold medal at the Paris Olympics 2024 for talking about Deadpool and Wolverine for an hour. Did get there. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So, how was your week?
How's 2XKO? So, are we doing an actual episode on 2XKO?
I don't think we've got enough material. So
I don't. I absolutely.
what I really
enough.
wanted was us to play duos in 2XKO.
Okay.
But by the time
is it over? So is it? Could we like play like after this, or is it
no,
over?
I
now?
think it's done.
Okay, fine.
As of
Okay.
if there's any time left, it's like the rest of the night. The problem is by the time you got it running, my fight stick stopped working with the game. So something I didn't realize is like the gameplay is pretty polished, but like the actual like surrounding game like frame, like the menus and the input systems is all actually very alpha, right? Like it is. And like when I say the gameplay systems are polished, it like plays nice, but it also needs to be tweaked and balanced, right? Like,
yeah, I have heard lots of stories, and I frankly don't know the truth of this, but I have heard lots of stories, just from Twitter and like friends I have in the FGC, that the game is incredibly imbalanced. That like there are lots of ways to just like kill the shit out of somebody by comboing them out, kind of.
there are at least 3 characters with touch death, right? Like, you get one hit and that's it.
Yep.
And you can balance around that if everybody has one, but that makes for not a great game, right? Like,
Do you like Marvel vs. Capcom? This is what I was understanding is the, Marvel vs. Capcom is kind of the blueprint a little bit here.
So little kid me loved MVC 2. Older me, who actually like has some understanding of playing fighting games, never got into hyper fighters because they tend to be very combo heavy, and I play lower combo grapplers typically, and I like more ponderous games because like frankly I'm just like not as interested in combos as a skill execution thing. That's like not my favorite part of fighting games. It's the decision making, but it looks neat, right? Like did you play with the pulse fuse, like the auto combo fuse?
Yes.
Okay.
I was so bad. I played 6 games. I lost every single one. I won rounds, to be fair.
Yeah.
But and I think honestly, we probably would have done okay with duos. Here's what I did. I logged in. I played the tutorial. I played Yasuo in the lab for maybe 10 or 15 minutes just to learn some sort of basic combos. And then I loaded in solo and I just put Alawi as my second. I was like, I don't know, fucking. And I would do pretty good with Yasuo. I do kind of okay with Yasuo, but anytime I had to move to Alawi, I just got owned, and I know that if I just like labbed Alawi for like 15 minutes, I probably also could have done fine, but I just didn't want to do that, and I just kept rolling, and I played 6 games in a row, and I honestly got so frustrated. I was just like, fuck this. Like,
I think part of it is that like one, like hyper fighters are kind of like that in some ways. 2, I noticed that Yasuo had some very reliable, look like relatively easy to perform combos, which is not to like poo-poo anything, just to be like that's like I was playing mostly Braum. Like similarly, I played Braum Darius, and I cared more about Braum. I put a little bit of work into Darius, but I did much better with Braum because like I actually put the effort into lab him. And part of it for me is just like I couldn't get, or I am less used to the tagging options. Also, because of the weird controller stuff, I often had like single buttons mismapped in like weird ways that caused weird problems. Like that was like,
yeah, I also think the controller buttons are like deeply unintuitive, and I don't know that there's a good, like my preferred fighter is Soul Calibur, right? Which I don't even, how would you describe it? It's like a 3D.
It's a 3D fighter. It's like Tekken.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of one of the things about Soul Calibur that I really enjoy is there's a lot of sidestepping. So kind of like the basic, like the basic mechanics you would say of Soul Calibur is that vertical hits are harder, horizontal hits are weaker. And there's kind of a 2-aspect defensive gameplay because you can sidestep right? So if somebody is coming at you with a hard hit and you see it, you can sidestep. And then there's also a block button, right? You have like an active ability to block, right? It's not just hitting back kind of thing. That's like Street Fighter rules, right? Hitting back.
Hold back to block is Street Fighter.
Yeah, and so it just like my instincts are sort of all wrong for this game, kind of. And the other thing is that like Soul Calibur is about executing combos, but it's like you also have a lot of I don't even know what you would call it. It's like sort of like touch defense. So for instance, if you are falling and you hit the defense button, you'll get a couple of iframes and you'll get to roll back to a neutral position, so that you can combo break somebody. Essentially, that's like a really important piece of sort of Soul Calibur. And like a lot of like being successful at Soul Calibur is stuff like Mitsurugi has this thing where he just points his katana at the ground and he stabs, right? So a lot of my Mitsurugi gameplay when I was playing a lot of Soul Calibur was trip him, stab him, right? You're just trying to add on like little instances of damage where you can, essentially. And all of those instincts seem pretty wrong for 2XKO. Weirdly, the most button mashy I feel like I've gotten in like maybe the last 20 years since like playing E Honda and Street Fighter 2 is 2XKO.
Yeah, I mean, part of that is that the comboing system is, people describe it as loose. It's like if you can kind of like make it happen, it'll happen. But it's like not like most combo routes are kind of like tight, right? Like you've got like small gaps and like you kind of like have an execution thing, and like if I hit like the 2-step combo for say Zangief, right? Like it will like if it's a thing that if the 3-hit attack that combos, it will combo every time. The thing that's a little bit weird about 2XKO is like you can kind of like delay your second hits and still get like the second hit out of a second hit stop set, but if you hit it too late, it won't true combo, right? You can block in between it. But you can also like do weird things like you can kind of like develop your own combos, which is I think I'm not used to it. I don't play enough Hyper Fighters to know if that's like as much of a thing in other Hyper Fighters. But like I was having fun trying to like learn some of this stuff, like do the push up with Braum and into like a jump into a ski, right? Like part of it for me too is like my instincts were also off because I like even Guilty Gear, which is kind of close, has like a different setup. Like I am used to 3 punches, 3 kicks, and it's like light, medium, heavy, and then 2 specials on the bottom. And so like I would like go for a light kick, but that's actually my special 1 button. And so I would like do like it's not like tied to the right thing. Also like because I'm so used to motion inputs or charge inputs, right? Since I'm used to like traditional fighting in game inputs, like I would like not recognize that I was like doing the like Braum's down A is a command grab, but it's like standing, or down special 1 is a command grab, but it's standing special 1 is kind of like it's a fireball if you've got the shield with ice on it, or just kind of like a ranged attack. And like it wouldn't like click in my mind that like I needed to stand up to do a neutral A to do the fireball. I like do it from down and expect, because like when you can like Hadoken out of a crouch, right? Like you can like quarter circle up, and like my instincts there just like weren't quite right to like hit all of that. So but that's like kind of any new fighting game, right? You have to retrain yourself a little bit for the new mechanics. Like one thing,
I was also dog shit at any of the tagging stuff. I use the tagging stuff actually as my block, because you could do for me like left bumper A or whatever would have your teammate come in and sort of block counter for you, and that was mostly my defensive gameplay. I'm so bad at back to block sort of like mechanics that most of what I was trying to do is I was like, okay, well this is how I'll block.
Yeah, no, that's like not generally the best use of it, but that makes sense that like as you're learning it. It's also like as like I don't know tag fighters well enough. Like most hyper fighters are tag fighters, and I like those tag mechanics were not intuitive to me either. Although the thing that I was getting a handle on was like it's like I think it's medium and team is the burst. Um, and burst is important for like combo breaking, right? Like um that's like an important mechanic to like be able to like stop at least one combo, right? Like um I think they have said that they want to tone down the damage and like the comboingness a little bit. Um Again, like I said, I had thought this was going to be like a lot of game companies will call things alphas when they're kind of like, maybe an early beta or like beta 1, right? This felt like actually an alpha. Like I don't think this is coming out until late next year at like the earliest.
Yeah. The one thing that I thought was weird is I did not get any of the Smash influence. People kept telling me that this was influenced by Smash. They were like, "This is like, I talked to somebody, I don't even remember who, but they were like, "Yeah, it's like bringing Smash to traditional fighter." Oh, okay, I guess it's just because there's this special button in the same way that you sort of have like specials in Smash, but I really did not feel any Smash
Yeah.
at all, basically. I was like,
Yeah, I think that was just people being like, "Oh, it's a direction in special. It's just like Smash," even though I don't think that's quite right. I agree with you.
yeah.
Um,
Honestly, I think it could benefit from sort. I think I would probably be okay with some of the combo-y damage of it if I could just give myself iframes, right, in the way that you can with Smash, right? Being able to just do um whatever, like an air dodge or something like that would have probably saved me quite a lot when it comes to this stuff. But
yeah.
I don't know. I haven't connected to a fighting game in like 20 years, so maybe I'm just sort of not in the genre anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, I I feel that. But when it makes a real debut, I think we should give it a try.
Give it a go. Yeah, sure, sure,
Yeah,
sure.
because
Especially as duos, I think there might be some level of like that, which would be cool.
yeah,
Basically, everybody I fought was in duos, which was interesting. I did not fight. I fought one single out of 6 games. So
and you don't have to worry about like actually using your assist there because your partner is using the assist, right?
mm,
And that can help with some like like one of Brahms' assists is like essentially a big block, so like it can help with that. Um, yeah. What else? I saw the 2005 Pride and Prejudice on Saturday. Talk about some Kino.
is
Uh,
that the one with Keira Knightley?
yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Paradox is Mr. Darcy.
He's what? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't know that, but my girlfriend loves the Pride and Prejudice, and she pointed it out to me.
Okay.
It's actually a pretty great movie. There's some stuff in there that's like a little bit weak in terms of characterization that I gather is like better drawn out in the book, but of course. But like there's some like really cool like there's a single shot that draws through like this house. Like they are there's like a fancy dinner and like it just like one shot through the house, the camera just kind of like dollies around and follows a couple different characters. And I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was there's some cool moments of filmmaking. In the chat, Arahi says Pride and Prejudice sucks. I'm a hater today. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the love story of the
Do you enjoy romances? How do you feel about the perennial classic 1997 James Cameron's Titanic? Okay.
I've never seen it.
You what?
Yeah, I've never seen Titanic.
It was the. I can't believe that's wild.
My parents didn't let me see it in 1997 because I was
It did
too
have
young.
titties in it. My dad specifically let me see it in 1997, and I remember the conversation that my mom said, where she was like, "Why would he be interested in it? It's got," I think she said, "boobs and tea. It's just boobs and tea parties, or kissing and tea parties." Maybe she didn't reference boobs or whatever. Because my older sister really loved that movie because she was like DiCaprio. And my dad said it's about a big ship that sinks. which which I was like, yeah, 8-year-old buddy loves a big ship that sings. Fuck yeah, like that was the greatest. That was the great stuff. But now I am a huge fan of the love story as I have grown older and appreciate romance fiction. I think it is one of the best romance movies that's ever been.
Kind of in this vein, I finished season 4 of The Sopranos. And there is a
Wait, I'm sorry. What happens at the end of season 4? Just I can't remember where the season lines are.
What happens at the end?
When we can spoiler this if anybody just like mute the podcast for 10 seconds.
Yeah, what does exactly happen at the end of season 4? Tony does not kill Carmine. Is the big... Oh, they get divorced. Or they separate. Like, Tony leaves the house.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Which is at the very end. And I was like, are they going to do
and
the
Tony
entire...
Blundetto is in here now, right?
Sorry?
Steve Buscemi's character? Tony Blundetto?
No, not yet.
Okay, so that's season 5. Okay.
Yeah, because Ralph Cifaretto dies towards the end.
Yeah, rest in peace, that piece of shit. One of the most loathsome characters in all of television, Ralph Cifaretto.
Not as loathsome as Janice, and I when I went to look up the actor for Bobby Bacala, it said spouse, and I was like, no! It was like the worst way to get spoiled on that.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. Yep, Janice and Bobby Bacala. I have so many thoughts about that. Actually, we'll talk about it when you actually finish the Sopranos.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that this was a weird season. Like that was our as my girlfriend and I were watching. Like it seemed like a bunch of weird, disconnected things all happening, and wasn't a particularly coherent season. There were some interesting moments.
Yeah, this is with Pyomai, right? This was
Pyomai.
The thing that Yeah, okay. I spoiled this on the podcast for you last time, and then I tried to sweep it up,
I didn't
sweep it under the
remember,
rug.
So
yeah, this was. Do you think Ralph Cifaretto killed Pyomai? That's the question.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, it's something that gets debated quite a lot in Sopranos mythos, is whether or not Ralph Cifaretto actually killed Pyomai, or if it was just kind of a projection of Tony's kind of anger. And it's just one of those things that the fandom sort of it's the debate, right? Did Ralph Cifaretto actually kill Pyomai?
I accidentally spoiled myself on Chris Moltisanti's dad. I don't know how it happens, but I know that Many Saints of Newark reveals that the cop didn't actually kill Chris Moltisanti's dad.
Oh yeah, well, because the Many Saints of Newark is about Dickie Moltisanti. It's about Chris's
is it?
dad.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's the main character, and actually, Pyomai is kind of the most important. Not the most important, but just one of the most important things to making that movie work. This is why I Die on This Hill and other Sopranos people fucking stupid, right? A lot of the Sopranos, I'm not gonna get into it. We'll talk about it. I'm sure we'll have a fucking episode that we get to talk about all of this Sopranos bullshit. But in the movie, there's a lot of stuff that the hardcore Sopranos fan base, who really only care about the mafia stuff, they don't really care about any of the family stuff. They don't even really care all that much about Tony's psychology, which in my mind is the most interesting kind of piece of it. That's the stuff that they're for, and the Many Saints of Newark is not about that. It is about Tony's psychology, and that's why they all hate it. Wrong, and that movie is actually super good.
I don't know. Maybe for me, the thing that's most important is kind of the Italian American experience, because things keep happening in this show that happened in my real life after that. Like my parents watched it when it came out and they don't remember this stuff, but it's it's kind of sad. My grandpa got hit by a car and that started his spiral towards losing his mind, right? That's essentially what happens with Corrado, right? And my grandpa looked kind of like Corrado, right? It is giving me fucking weird nightmares, right? It is. It's how did this so perfectly capture an experience that I personally had with people that act and talk and look like the people that I know, right? It is weird. Not that my family ever had any mafia involvement, just for the record. But
wink, wink.
No, actually, since I've started watching it, I've had a couple conversations with. I get the impression that my dad, like, this was a thing that my dad had to deal with, and is very insistent that we never had any connections. We never did, but like it was a thing that he had to deal with, right? Like, you know.
So your dad is Artie Bucco. I understand. Sure. Yeah.
Not Artie, more like Melfi's ex-husband.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I love Dr. Melfi. Dr. Melfi is great, and her psychologist Elliot is also great because they all just are there for the fucking gossip, and I'm like, this is cinema, right? Like, you know, you have the great pitch of a mob boss starts having panic attacks and goes to shrink, right? That's like the pitch for The Sopranos. What a great pitch, right? But nobody tells you that the shrink is getting pressured by all of her shrink friends to reveal details about the mob boss that she is currently treating, which is obviously against doctor-patient confidentiality. It's just like, I don't know, the stuff like that makes me love The Sopranos.
No, it's funny because like everybody but Melfi is kind of played off as kind of a, like all of the psychiatrists was like, I forget the difference. It's like kind of played off as like a buffoon, right? Like the one that they send Meadow to, who's just like, sure, go to Spain. Who cares, right? Like, you know, it's like.
How do you feel about Meadow and AJ? This is also a common talking point in the Sopranos fandom. People hate Meadow and AJ and Carmela, actually all three of them.
I mean, I think Carmela is absolutely justified in all of her rage, right? Like,
really?
I mean, Tony cheats on her, kind of like.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's true. I think Carmela is. Oh man. Now I'm a little afraid I would be spoiling things. My thing about Carmela is she is also a piece of shit. They're all pieces of shit. I hate all of them. Baby.
Yeah, I mean, like they all have moments, right? Like this is part of the reason why I brought it up as this, like, she visits Meadows' apartment in the city and makes a comment about how Billy Budd can't be gay because of like the gay agenda or whatever. Like she doesn't use those words because it's like, you know, 20 years ago or whatever, right? But like that feels like a reason why my mom wouldn't let me watch the Titanic. Like that same type of like moral framework, right? Like and like AJ is kind of a piece of shit.
I'm sorry, the chat is pretty fun. Do you know I Think You Should Leave from Netflix?
I'm familiar with
there's a bit in there that's about it would be too impossible to explain. Okay. Go, like you could watch that bit, I guess, maybe, and you'd understand, but that's a good joke. Good job. Rachel in the chat making me laugh.
I think AJ's kind of a piece of shit just because he's like basically bullying Bobby Bacala. Like when he was doing the seance, I was like I was thinking like my dad would beat me, right? Like if I tried to pull that kind of thing, right? Like, you know, but like, you know, I obviously wouldn't do something like that. I wouldn't like take a kid who just lost his mother and like try to do a seance. That's like fucking terrible, right? Like,
yeah, AJ is like the most. AJ is the, like, I obviously sort of loathe kind of all of them. Meadow is honestly kind of fine, but she doesn't really do much, really. AJ, I just want to like punch in the face. AJ is such a stupid piece of shit. Just like, God, just the most dumb idiot. And like, not even in like a kind of endearing way. Like Christopher Moltisanti is also a stupid piece of shit, but he's kind of like fun. AJ just makes me like, oh, God, this kid again. Which, to be fair, I think is the point, right? But you know.
Yeah. The only character I am left liking at this point is Carmela's dad. Just because his entire role is just be shit on by his wife, right? Like and he doesn't get any characterization beyond that, right? Like I thought Bobby Bacala's arc was kind of interesting, right? Like cuz like as much as I hate Janice, she kind of has a point, right? Like I don't think they let that storyline breathe enough for it to feel super satisfying, but like he is kind of like still living with his with his dead wife, right? Like, you know, and it's causing his children problems, and I get that. Um, uh, but I think it happened a little too fast. Yeah. I thought they were going to go through the whole entire divorce arc in like one episode, and I thought that was going to be crazy. Like she was going to end up taking him back to the house by the end of the episode. I was like, they can't do that, right? Like that's too insane. And of course it was. But
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot left. Tony Blundetto like is a huge character in my estimation. He is you know did you get to Lalo in Better Call Saul?
Lalo is. I watched everything.
Lalo Salamanca. He showed up right at the end of season 4.
Sounds familiar. I honestly don't.
He wears like Hawaiian shirts. He has like a mustache.
I think so, but I don't remember it super well. It's been a while.
So in the Better Call Saul sort of fandom, and I'm thinking about it because I just watched like almost all of Better Call Saul inside of a week. In the Better Call Saul fandom, Lalo is a titanic character. He is so good and so interesting and does so much stuff that you kind of forget he's not in the whole show, basically. And Tony Blundetto is like that. Tony Blundetto is like, he just feels instantly so important to the story of The Sopranos that this is why I keep asking about it. I thought he showed up in season 3, right? Because last time when you told me you finished season 3, I was like, oh, is that when Tony Blundetto shows up? And no, apparently he doesn't show up until season 5. But like, that's kind of that's kind of like, he's just like such an important character in my head. But I guess all that stuff happens in season 5 with him. Tony Blundetto is the subject of a number of stories that you have heard over the course of the show so far. Like the robbery that Jackie Aprile Sr. and Tony do to become made men, where they rob another gangster's game. Tony Blundetto was there for that, right? Like, and is a part of that whole sort of like backstory saga to how they kind of like through the and Tony became a capo and all that stuff.
Okay. Yeah. I just apparently appears in episode 2 of season 5. So soon.
Okay. Yeah.
After I get through season 4 of Clone Wars.
Okay. Hell yeah.
Yeah. What else? I got everything and everything viable in Mr. Pandaria remix as of like 3 hours ago. So
good for wow, really? Wow. Yeah, I eventually got there. I just started at a certain point. I just started logging in and doing all the raids every day, and then all of a sudden I had everything. I was like, oh,
yeah, no,
I guess I'm done.
I did the same. Like maybe a week ago, I'd started doing just Terrace of Spring just because it was like an easy way to like get to like to do the daily, and then I did all of them, and then over the weekend I did normal and heroic of Siege, and then I tried doing Mythic, and I got like 3 or 4 bosses in before I like killed.
Yeah, I never did Mythic actually, thinking about it, but I don't super. What do you know what the reward for Mythic is? A title maybe?
There's a I never did. I only did. I think I did Mythic once with the guild for Siege. I think it's a title.
Okay.
But I was doing it just as like another like because I knew like my days were limited. It was like another way to get large amounts of bronze. And I only got partway through, but I did pick up a couple of appearances through it, right? Like because the weapon appearances you can't buy right out. But you know, I'm happy enough buying getting.
Yeah, it is wild that we are 3 days away from a WoW expansion. Yeah. I don't feel like that, but something that a friend of mine said, who funnily enough works on WoW, but something that he said is that you don't feel hype because you never stopped playing, which is actually so true. Normally there's this huge content drought between expansions, right? Like when I think of a WoW expansion launch, I think of like 14 months of like Siege of Orgrimmar kind of like whatever, right? What is interesting about this one is that I have been playing a lot, kind of right up until I did all of Mythic. I'm on Tyvon. I'm on the final few steps of Tyvon. I'm doing the dailies for the whelps, one of which is broken, which is the most infuriating thing. And I'm like, when the fuck is this going to get patched? Because this quest is uncompletable. Basically, there's a quest item that you can't click on right now. And until I complete this quest, I'm not going to get the achievement. And it's like the achievement that's holding up all the other achievements kind of thing. But I'm also waiting on the right Tuskar fishing hole to spawn. So we'll see if I get it tomorrow. Theoretically, I could be done, if they patch this thing and the right Tuskar achievement spawns tomorrow. I think I'll have Tyvant before the launches, but who knows? I'll probably end up coming back and paying attention to a little bit, kind of like week after week, basically.
Yeah, I wonder if they did the early release bit so that they reduced the day one server crush that always happens.
I think they structured it pretty well, to be honest with you. It's funny because a lot of people were complaining about but I actually think that the early release, this makes quite a lot of sense because they time gate all of the important stuff. You don't get Mythic Zeros, you get Mythic Plus, you don't get Raid. It's not like anybody who starts really. The only thing that really matters, and this is something that I care about, professions, right? If you're somebody like me who's going to want to go hard on professions, you ought to be playing from day one kind of thing. And that's something that I do plan on doing, but I don't think that it will matter for basically anyone who is trying for, I don't know, like you know what I mean? Like the sweaty parts, right? It's not going to matter for anybody who's doing, it's not going to
matter. Are like delves also gated?
Yeah, everything is just essentially it is all about what item level stuff gives you. So you get like heroic dungeons, I think is the best you get in the first week or two. Maybe Mythic Zeros. I don't quite remember, but it's great for me because I am a leisurely leveler, right? Whenever I do my first leveling, I always want to read all of the quest texts and, do all that stuff. Normally I actually spend quite a lot of time at the max level just going back and because I complete all the side quests, right? So I'm going to do something pretty similar, and we'll see.
They released a video today where they said that they have slightly more side story content in this expansion, so that you don't have to replay the story stuff if you've already done it with somebody else in your warband. Which
I'm a big fan of that.
I might play Outlaw Rogue for part of this X-Pack. I like the hero tree, the Fortune hero tree is calling to me more than I don't know, who knows? Like, and I've been enjoying playing Beauregard in the I leveled him up using the normal kind of pre-expansion event. I've been enjoying that, but I enjoyed playing as him in there. But I am not as enamored with the monk hero talent trees.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I have a lot of love for the warrior hero talent trees in theory, but I obviously have to see how kind of impact this. The complicated thing though is that the tree that I want to play as arm is Mountain Thane, but that is only Fury and Prot. And then and then Arms has Slayer, which is Bladestorm execute focused, two of my favorite buttons, right? But at the same time, there's another tree called Colossus that gives you a new button that's cool and fun. You get to do big damage, basically.
Yeah, mine's probably going to come down to how I suspect. Like, can you switch them freely, or is that like a thing that's like
they're like any other talents. My understanding is.
I suspect that for Monk, it's going to be that the one tree is for AoE and the other tree is for single target.
Yeah, because for Monk, it's Conduit of the Celestials and Shadowpan, right?
Yes, yeah, for Windwalker.
Okay. I don't understand what either of those do. I paid attention to the classes paying attention to and want to play. One of which is very difficult for me because the lore is so good for both versions of Condor by Warlock. Demonology has Diabolist, which summons big, huge, cool demons, which Gondor does in lore. But then also there's Soul Harvester, which is you absorb a demon soul and you keep doing cool stuff with the demon souls, which is also very like lore. And I'm just like, why can't I do both? I love both of these.
Yeah, no, and then the it's like Fortune something for
Fate Bound.
Fate
I
Bound.
hate that name. Yeah.
But
But I
like,
think it is your kind of jank.
yeah. Flip a coin, and if you get a bunch of the same heads, same side in a row, everything's great, right? Like, it's like I I had a bunch of fun, and I think I might sit down at some point and like actually, if I actually sit down and do the weak auras for Outlaw Rogue, I might be in. But we'll see.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of delves, honestly, because I think it's going to open up. One of the things that I think has kind of capped my ability to play alts in recent times is the only way to gear them, it feels like, is through raids and through Mythic Plus, which is fine. I like Mythic Plus. I'm going to play tons of Mythic Plus, I'm sure, in the new season. That. But I also am kind of cognizant, I guess I would say, of how uh delves are going to sort of scratch the itch of me playing a new character and getting them geared through kind of instance content. Like the idea that I could play one of my alts, but I don't have to do mythics. I don't have to do. I could just like go do a bunch of delves, right, and get up to heroic level is actually to me.
Yeah, no, me too. And then feel like you can go to raid with the character, right? And like not worry about, putting stuff behind. Lou in the chat says dwarf elves. I guess it's a delve joke, which I approve of. Dwarf elves.
Hey, in the back half we said we were going to talk about D&D 5e. What's going on?
Yes, right. So following on from our conversation from last week, you were on a different podcast to defend 5e against the haters. And my GM actually got back. He listened to the episode and he got back to me. He wanted me specifically to point out that one thing that 5e has over PF2e is that your move action can be split up between like you don't have to take it all at once, which is my character never did, but like for like the fighter characters, it's useful, right? It's like
yeah, like move 3 squares, hit somebody, move 3 more squares.
Yeah, which is like a different, like Pathfinder wants you to do that differently, right? It wants you to like spend your actions because you don't get like 3 actions and a move, 3 attacks and a move, but the game's balanced differently, obviously. But something we were talking about before the cast started was this like argument about that like Hunter's Mark is still concentration as like a thing that people are mad about. It was interesting because you brought up that like Hunter's Mark is a bonus action and controlling your animal is a bonus action. And the interesting thing to me is in like the way you handle that in PF2E is just make them each actions, right? Like, and if sometimes you maybe don't choose to sustain the spell, sometimes you choose to not move your animal companion, or like you just like you choose to not move yourself, and like you can flow between those, whereas you can't substitute those actions out as easily, at least in D&D 5e. And so that was the thing that popped into my head. It's like a thing that I think that PF like that the 3 action system solves pretty elegantly. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is friction, but in my mind, this is good friction, right? I think that's an interesting choice. Do I use my animal or do I cast, Hunter's Mark? And maybe the answer is, yeah, I don't cast Hunter's Mark. I'm gonna charge with my animal because that's what I'm like here to do, and that's like my, I don't know, like the fun part of my gameplay or whatever. Really, in my mind, it's almost speaking to a successful, right? Something that game designers will sometimes say is when you have players who are torn between 2 things and they really want to do both of them, it's actually kind of a sign of good design because it means that they're both weighted pretty and like they want to do things, and it's actually kind of a mistake to just allow them to, essentially. And I like you could make a lot of argument, that's like a very basic sort of thought. You can make a lot of arguments around that, and I don't know that the context is super sort of like one-to-one, but the more that I have sort of immersed my D&D like influencer world and come to understand what people think about this, that, or the other thing, I don't know, I don't have a lot of patience for this kind of like, this is like level 0 sort of talk that I don't think actually does a very good job of
Yeah,
kind of penetrating deeper into the actual nuts and bolts of how the game are run and work.
Yeah, it's also like a very kind of like very specific thing to be mad about, right? Like, like it seems weirdly like like when I think about like whether or not you think a system is good, I don't think about like, whether this particular mechanic is good or not. And maybe some of that is just that like we were talking about that like um the different, I think one of my cats is sorry. Uh each kind of character, like each character kind of subclass plays very similar to other characters of that same subclass, and maybe that's part of the problem is that like you can't like route around bad options as easily. If you or if you think an option is bad, like in like PF2E, right, like you'd be able to pick one or two of those, like you could pick one or the other and not have to worry about it, and not have to worry about like like a dead feature essentially, in the same way that you have to maybe worry about that in 5e, where like you kind of have to bring, if you're not using all of your character, you feel like you're maybe wasting something, right? Like dead features were a thing in 1e that got talked about a lot, that I think they mostly excised from 2e. And that's not to say that like you shouldn't ever give yourself an interesting choice, but it's like you don't feel obligated to like have it, like figure out a way to like maybe work that into your move set, because you don't necessarily have to take it, right? Like it feels like if you always have to have Hunter's Mark, you should be using it at some point, right?
Yeah, and it's like, and it is a completely myopic view of things. So for instance, I didn't even get to talk about this on that cast because, whatever. Rangers have access to an entirely new fundamental system, right? This weapon mastery system that I've sort of mentioned before, right? The idea that your weapons have innate traits. And one of the things you can do in 5e is use weapons pretty free, right? This is an explicit kind of class feature in the new version of Fighter, which allows them to attain weapon mastery for 3 different weapons. So it kind of has the almost like barbarian from Diablo thing, like you knock somebody down with a great hammer and then you swap to your great sword and then you hit them with your second attack, kind of like sort of the idea of this level of game. Rangers obviously don't have that level. I think they can be masteried to 2 weapons at a time. So the idea is, Rangers will have fewer options than warriors, and most people seem to think that Rangers will have a ranged option. They'll do like longbow and, for instance, right? And like sure, maybe you swap from your longbow to your scimitar and do stuff, but whatever kind of thing.
Only if you're a dark elf.
If you're a dark elf, if you're a lawful or chaotic good, dark elf with a is it a leopard? Is it a tiger? What's the
panther?
Companion?
It's a panther.
Panther, right? Yes, yeah, a panther. Yeah, okay.
And a barbarian best friend. Yeah.
Yeah, like this is part and parcel to the problems with this level of kind of like discourse is, yeah, sure, maybe it's a fucking bonus action to control your pet or to cast Hunter's Mark, but it's also no longer a bonus action to attack with your offhand weapon. This is something that people used to complain in the old version of Ranger, which is that offhand attacks on 2-weapon fighting were using your bonus action, which was the same sort of thing. Hunter's Mark was a bonus action. I can't do my 2-weapon fighting and Hunter's Mark as the same thing. Well, now if you're using your weapon mastery, taking scimitars, and your scimitars have Nick, that allows you to do your double attack inside of 1 attack action instead of using your bonus action. And it's like I could have had that level of conversation, but like just nobody was there essentially. Frankly, because I don't think any of them did the reading that I had supplied them, because I found this sort of comprehensive breakdown of the difference between 5e and 5.5, and I read through the whole thing, and just nobody else had read that, so no one had any level of kind of mastery the I don't know, the material. But hey, who knows? I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up switching my game to 5.5e, because frankly, I can just take the good stuff and get rid of the bad stuff, is my philosophy. There are some things that I don't like. I actually don't like the changes to backgrounds that are being introduced. And so I will probably sort of house rule some stuff related to backgrounds.
What are they changing there?
They're getting rid of the out of combat value of background.
Okay.
So Mateo Vasquez is a smuggler, and smugglers have the ability to, as part of your background, to any town or larger, like any settlement that's a town or larger, you have contacts in that town, and you can provide yourself lodging for free, by like using your black market connections. And that's like a very cool part of like Mateo's RP, right? But they basically said nobody used these, nobody cared about these. And instead, now backgrounds are sort of how you get the plus minuses when it comes to your ability scores. So the
Right,
idea
okay,
is
because
that,
they pulled a lot of those off of the they're calling them species, right? Because
yeah, yep. Species still have power attached to them, but the power is built in different sort of, so like dragon breath for dragon kind of thing. Do you hear that, Lou? He's taking away our ability to deal with burning blood. That's also true. One of the things in Pathfinder or in D&D 5.5e is that, so quick backstory, like in Hell's Rebels, the players in 7th Expedition are fighting against beastmen in the first zone. The Eastern Forest is, and they have found out that the one of the colonies brought over this infection, and they infected themselves with burning blood, and the whole colony turned into beastmen, and it eventually became this war that has been rampaging through the 30 years kind of thing. And paladins, don't you know, can spend 5 points of healing from lay on hand to cure a disease, and are also immune to disease at level 3. And so those two features are done away with in 5.5e. There's plenty of other updates, but disease is more deadly. So now whenever the players make melee attacks against beastmen, they run the risk of becoming infected.
interesting.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
That's that.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't play much 5e. Looks remains to be seen what my other group will run in, but I've been mostly playing 2e. So, but
yeah. So how many games are you in right now? It's your 5e game just ended, the 8-year one.
yeah. Although on Friday we were talking about what we want the next thing to look like because we didn't want to stop. It's probably not gonna be another 8-year game, but
Elm 7th Expedition or 7th Sea, I mean.
yeah. No, we talked about PF2E and we talked about 5. Like one of the people in the group played 1E with friend of the cast Mark, and left with a very bitter taste in her mouth after that. And part of that was that, like, if you failed like a whole person in 1E, you like didn't do anything for the rest of the session, basically, because the way the combat worked, right? Like, whereas 2E solves a lot of those problems. But I'm playing, so there's that, and then there's friend of the cast Mark is running a game in 2E online, and then I play hybrid in person online with a group that's local to me. That is the first AP from PF2E, because we've been working through it over the course of like 3 or 4 years at this point.
Okay.
Man, I've never heard of anyone salty after playing D&D with Mark. Definitely not. Mark likes to tinker with things, and sometimes that works out well, sometimes it doesn't.
I have done quite a lot of tinkering for my 5e game. My players are discovering their artifacts, which is that I don't like the way 5e does magic items. So I have instead decided. Do you remember the special feats that you guys got in Hell's Rebels?
Yeah.
It's that, but through items. But it's very cool because part of like the thing about 7th Expedition that's fun is they are learning the lore place, right? Like as they go. And one of the things that I've done is whenever Warren, who's playing the wizard, uses identify on one of the artifacts, he gets these visions about what the item has done, right? So for instance, one of the artifacts is a collar for Rachel's playing a ranger who has a rhino companion, like a beast mastery ranger with a rhino companion. And the first magic item that she got was a collar that went around the rhino's neck, and we didn't know what it did at first because they didn't cast identify. Which was funny. I was like, why didn't you identify the magic item? But whatever. But you actually learn and you can see the vision of this is actually a magic item that the lizardmen place on their massive gigantic dinosaurs, and you watch it get put on the dinosaur, and then the dinosaur is fighting in battle, and then you watch as somebody goes to the dinosaur's corpse because they've just lost the battle, and they pull the like the item off, right, and they slap it on a much smaller collar that can fit around a rhino, that kind of and so like that stuff is super fun, and I'm having a pretty good time with it. Honestly, there's a lot I quite love about the freedom that it feels like 5e has when the balance is so much more kind of straightforward and kind of intuitive in a way. And so I don't know. I'm excited to get deeper,
No,
into that basic.
I definitely think that that's an advantage. Is it's easier to see the math, and so you can like improvise around those kinds of things a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think it's doable in 2e. It's just I think the impulse isn't there, right, to like drop your own magic items or whatever, because like there are a lot more magic items in 2e. But I think part of that's like DM stuff, right? Like, are you good enough at kind of I think I've got a thought somewhere for a later episode about like over systemization, like cramping GM style. Like there is a part of me that says that like the less kind of background systems you have, the better it is for like the GM to be able to like roll with things, right? Like it's like,
That's literally what it's funny. It's wild that this happened. So they did the first expedition and they went back to the harbor and they got a boat. And they're like, okay, now we're going to travel upriver because they found a river and they're like, we're going to go to the river and we're going to travel up the river. And I knew what was in there, right? But I realized that they were heading toward, they found it at the end of the session. It's called Tajteka. It's a massive ruined city, right? And I realized as they were moving upriver, I was like, if there was a city here, and I knew that city was there 30 or 40 years ago, right? I was like, there would have been like towns, there would have been like villages along the river road, you know what I mean? And so I just kind of improvised out of nowhere. I was like, you guys see the sort of destroyed remnants of a dock, and they went and they investigated, and they found an obelisk because the city is kind of all of this stuff revolves around the death god Cyrexis, right? And they're learning that, yeah, the gods that we had in Saran are actually here. It's the same god with the same symbol, right? Like they learned that for the first time. But one of my players, Harry, her background, which is a custom background that I built for her, is she has the ability to make scenes play out in sort of constellations because she's like a star being, like a circle of stars druid, right? So basically what she can do is she can sort of like tap into kind of the ambient emotions in the past of a place or whatever to make like a little scene. And this is like script reads that we used to do for right, where a bunch of NPCs are sort of talking this kind of thing. Obviously I didn't have a script read for that, but I was like, yeah, well, absolutely. And they watched the battle where they watched a horde of beastmen attacking this attacking this village, right? And Harry was like, you know what? I pay a lot of attention. Is there anybody who is fighting in a special, doing something, like unique and interesting? And I was like, yeah, there absolutely is. There's this guy. And I described this whole thing about, this guy is fighting a bull and the bull gores him and kind of charges into, like charges kind of below ground, right? And so they start digging and then they find the corpse of this guy and the corpse has an artifact. And that artifact was supposed to be somewhere else. I know where all of the artifacts are, like all supposed to be and where the players are supposed to supposed to get them or whatever, but like I just on the fly, we made this town, they learned this lore, Harry used her unique kind of background ability and the reward was a magic item, right? And I think all of that stuff is kind of enabled by the simplicity of sort of the system and the way in which it kind of like those backgrounds specifically really like empower players to be able to do I don't know, that kind of cool shit, right? The only reason they learned this stuff about Cyrexis is because one of them is a paladin of and I don't know, I just think that stuff to me feels freer in 5e than it did in Pathfinder.
I think some of that is I think some of that's just like the way you play it, right? Like I don't see like a reason why you couldn't do that. I think there's an instinct to look to like existing mechanics. It's like, that isn't always there, right? Like PF2A, I think PF1E especially over systematized things at a certain point, like after it went on for long enough. And I don't think there's a reason why you couldn't do something like that in PF2E, but I think the instinct is less there to kind of do that thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think
I'm just way less worried about like balance concerns. I used to get so in my head about balance in PF1E.
yeah,
Right?
I think that's also less of a problem in 2E, right? Like, it's you just like don't give anything a numerical balance, right? Like, you rarely ever give anything a +1, right? Like, or like you just kind of like there are enough magic items like you could figure out an analogous effect or like do something that wouldn't. I think this is why, like, say, free archetype works is because you're often not giving more power, you're giving more options, and you could do something similar, right? Like, you could have an artifact give a feat that gives a new combat thing. You have to be maybe worried about that feat being relatively balanced, but like, you could even just like reskin a feat that exists elsewhere and be like, you get like, the martial dedication feat, right? Like something like that. And it would just kind of work.
Yeah, all of the artifacts key into class. I'm actually thinking about them quite a lot like talent trees in WoW,
Sure.
right? Where they kind of like key into specific kind of class features. So for instance, the one that Lou just got that they found in this village is the what they're called, like the stone fist, Kamal's stone fists is what they're called. And the core feature is that it lets you upgrade your weapon die on martial arts once a day. So you can, instead of rolling 1d6, you can roll 2d6, right? And yeah, that's balance. Yeah, like that's balance. It's a lot of power, right? You go in, you attack, you flurry blows, you're doing essentially double damage once a day. You can have this like insane kind of like burst win, right? But I'm just like way less concerned about that in 5e because I have a better handle for sort of the numbers in my head. So it's like, yeah, okay. I mean, you can, if you burst for a bunch of extra damage, I think that is good and feels cool, but is not, out of the, I don't know, out of the realm of sort of balance.
Yeah, and
except for,
Yeah, and I feel like you could probably, if you played enough PF2E, you think you could get there because like there are plenty of analogous things I can think of ways to like kind of effectively do that. I need to go look at like the individual things, but it's effectively like, like a talisman that's rechargeable, right? Like, because that's the thing that PF2 has is like basically scrolls for martial characters. That I think get underutilized actually, but they're just hard to remember and use. But that's,
yeah, when I was looking up, I read a million magic items when I was putting this whole system together in the first place. And the funny thing is that I found that I honestly feel like a +1 greatsword is just so good in 5e, right? Like 5% chance to hit and 1 extra damage on all your attacks. Damn, you are thriving with that. And I just felt like everything that I was designing, I was like, probably worse than just having a +1, like having a +1 greatsword. You probably want a +1 arc, more than you want this thing. But the point of it is that the feature is cool and it's very tailored to their classes, right?
Yeah,
I want it to be something that that connects to some sort of class feature, that they have, in the same way that like the color, like that is enhancing the animal companion, like it's a direct enhancement of the animal companion feature, right? But I don't know, that's what makes it feel good, right?
Yeah. All right, we've gone to like 2 hours. I should probably go to sleep soon. Do you have anything else you want to talk about before I sign us out?
Nope. I think we did it. We covered it. Okay.
All right. If you'd like to email us about anything you talked about this podcast, you can email us at derpsplaygames@gmail.com or podcast@derpsplaygames.com. You can follow us on Twitch.tv /derpsplaygames or youtube.com/@derpsplaygames, where these go out live. Rate, review us on iTunes. All the links are down in the description. Buddy, you have anything you're looking to promote?
I guess not. I have nothing to promote right now. Yeah. I'm doing a big company retreat next week, so we're not going to do the podcast next week.
Okay.
Fun fact. So that's taken like all my.
We have had a series of, I lost my voice last week. We have, despite our best efforts, only been able to do this once every other week for most of the summer. But maybe
that's
with the fall, more regularity will come. But we'll see.
Honestly, we could do Sunday if we want to do Sunday because all of this stuff starts on.
Yeah. We'll talk about it because I'm also on call starting tomorrow, and so maybe it's just easier.
Okay.
Like nothing will probably happen, but there's a chance that like in the middle of the podcast I will have to run. But
Yeah, sure.
yeah, but we'll figure it out. With that, I'm gonna say until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.